In a single moment, you can lose respect for yourself, not because you're weak, but because you let a passing emotion drive the wheel. You've probably felt it before. One text ruins your mood. One comment pulls you into an argument you didn't even want. One small situation keeps replaying in your mind long after it's over. Most people think the problem is the world out there, the pressure, the people, the unfairness. But the deeper truth is quieter. The real damage usually comes from the speed of your reaction, not the size of the event. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in life is this. You stop answering everything. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You stop treating every provocation like a call to war. That isn't passivity. That's command. Real calm is not weakness. It's disciplined strength. It's the ability to feel everything and still choose your response with intention. This episode is built on one idea that can change your life if you practice it. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. Most people miss that space. They react, regret, justify, repeat. But people who grow, really grow, learn to live inside that space. 2 seconds of awareness before you speak. One deeper breath before you decide. One honest question before you respond. Am I choosing this, or am I being pulled by the moment? And let's be real, I'm not talking from some perfect mountain of self-control. We all get triggered. We all have old wounds, old fears and pressure points. Maturity is not feeling less. Maturity is feeling fully without surrendering your steering wheel. It's hearing anger, embarrassment or fear, and still responding like a leader, not like a reflex. That's not talent. That's training. In this journey, we're not romanticizing silence or pretending emotion is bad. We're doing something practical. We're learning how to protect your energy, how to stop emotional leakage, how to hold your center when life gets loud, how to become the person who is hard to provoke, hard to destabilize, and impossible to control through emotion. If part of you is exhausted from overreacting, over-explaining and overthinking, that part of you is not broken. It's ready for a different way to live, clearer, calmer, stronger. Because when you master the power of not reacting, you don't lose your personality. You finally reclaim it. 1. The trap of automatic reaction. Most people don't have an anger problem, a focus problem, or even a discipline problem at the root. They have an automatic reaction problem. Something happens, and before awareness even arrives, the body tightens. The mind jumps to a story, and the mouth or the fingers move. A message gets sent. A tone changes. A door closes. And later, when the nervous system settles, regret walks in and asks a painful question. Why did I do that again? What makes this trap dangerous is how normal it feels. It feels honest to say it as it is. It feels strong to answer fast. It feels necessary to defend yourself immediately. But in many moments that speed is not truth. It's conditioning. It's your past borrowing your present body to repeat an old script. The moment you see that, everything changes. Because now the problem is not, I am a bad person, or I am emotionally broken. The problem is simpler and more solvable. Your reaction loop is faster than your awareness loop. Think about how this plays out in ordinary life. You wake up already a little tense, open your phone, and see something that pokes insecurity. Your mind creates a conclusion in seconds. They don't respect me. I'm behind. I'm being ignored. Then your behavior follows the story, not the facts. You withdraw, attack, over-explain, or spiral. By noon, your energy is gone, not because life was impossible, but because your internal system kept firing without permission. This is why 2 people can face the same event and walk away with completely different outcomes. One reacts from old wiring. The other responds from chosen values. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus said we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about things. That line is not poetic decoration. It's a diagnostic tool. The event is one layer. Your interpretation is another. Your reaction is a third. If you fuse all three into one instant, you feel helpless. If you separate them, you recover power. Event, interpretation, choice. That tiny separation is the beginning of emotional freedom. And neuroscience agrees with this in plain terms. When you feel threatened, socially, emotionally, physically, your survival circuitry can hijack your response before your reflective mind catches up. That's not a character flaw. It's a built-in system. But built-in does not mean unchangeable. Training creates new defaults. Repetition creates new emotional muscle memory. You can teach your system that not every discomfort is danger, not every criticism is attack, not every delay is rejection. So what do you do today, not someday? Start with one simple practice. Name the loop while it's happening. Quietly say to yourself, trigger, story, impulse. That's it. Don't fix everything in that moment. Just label it. Labeling interrupts fusion. Fusion is when you become the reaction. Labeling is when you witness the reaction. And the witness is always stronger than the impulse, even if only by one breath at first. Then add a second move, delay expression, not awareness. Feel fully, but postpone output. You can feel anger without sending the text. You can feel hurt without making a speech. You can feel fear without making a bad decision. This is not suppression. Suppression is pretending you feel nothing. Mastery is feeling everything and choosing timing. If, then, for today, if you feel the urge to react fast, then take one full breath and ask, what outcome do I want from this moment? Not, how do I win this exchange? Not, how do I prove my point? Just outcome. Clarity, respect, peace, distance, repair. That one question pulls you out of ego theater and back into authorship. Here's the deeper truth most people discover late. Every automatic reaction is a vote for your old identity. Every conscious response is a vote for your future identity. You're not just handling a moment. You're building a self. Quietly, repeatedly, irreversibly. So tonight, don't measure your day by productivity alone. Measure it by recovery speed. How fast did you notice the loop? How quickly did you return to center? That is real growth. Not perfection. Not never reacting again. Just reacting less automatically and living more intentionally. And maybe that's where strength actually begins. Not in controlling the world, but in refusing to be controlled by your first impulse. 2. The emotional hijack happens in the body. First, before a thought becomes a sentence, it becomes chemistry. That's why in high-pressure moments, you don't just think upset. You feel it physically. Your chest tightens, your jaw locks, your breathing gets shallow, your shoulders rise, your voice changes. The body starts preparing for battle before your wise mind has even entered the room. If you don't understand this, you'll keep trying to solve emotional storms with logic alone, and you'll wonder why logic keeps losing. This is where many people get stuck. They wait until they feel calm to choose a better response. But calm often doesn't arrive by accident. You create it through physiology first. In other words, the path to emotional control is not think better, then feel better. In many moments, it's breathe better, then think clearer. That shift sounds small, but it changes everything about how you move through conflict, pressure, and provocation. Imagine a simple scene. Someone sends you a disrespectful message. Instantly, your system reads threat. Not lion in the jungle threat, but status threat, belonging threat, identity threat. Your body doesn't care that it's just a text. It reacts as if your position in the tribe is under attack. Heart rate climbs, attention narrows, nuance disappears. In that state, your mind becomes a lawyer for your emotion. It stops searching for truth and starts building a case. That's why people send messages they regret, make decisions they can't defend later, and call it being real. It isn't being real. It's being hijacked. The Stoic frame and modern science meet beautifully here. The Stoics teach that perception is trainable. Science shows your nervous system is trainable. Put together, that means your reactions are not destiny. They are patterns. And patterns can be replaced. You don't need to become emotionless. You need to become skillful under emotion. Start with a practical reset you can use anywhere. Exhale longer than you inhale. For 1 minute, inhale gently through the nose, then exhale slowly and fully. Longer exhale signals safety to the nervous system. Safety widens perception. Wider perception restores choice. This is not spiritual decoration. It is a mechanical intervention in your state. State first, strategy second. Then add posture. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, relax your hands, soften your eyes. These are not cosmetic details. The body and brain are in constant conversation, and your posture is part of that language. A clenched body tells the brain, "We're under attack." A grounded body tells the brain, "We can handle this." One leads to reaction, the other opens the door to response. Here's the practical mistake to avoid: using breathing only after the explosion. Use it at the first signal, not the last consequence. The first signal might be a fast heartbeat, a sarcastic inner voice, an urge to interrupt, a sudden need to prove your point. Catching it early is emotional intelligence in action. Waiting until damage happens and then apologizing is recovery, but early interception is mastery. If then for today, if your body shows even one clear stress signal in a conversation, then pause your words and take 2 slow breaths before continuing. Not to look calm, to become clear. Clarity is the real goal. And ask yourself this in the middle of tension. What is my body believing right now that might not be fully true? Maybe it believes delay means rejection. Maybe disagreement means disrespect. Maybe silence means abandonment. These old equations drive new mistakes. Question them, and your behavior starts changing at the root. By the end of this chapter, remember one core principle: your mouth should never move faster than your nervous system can regulate. Because when your state is chaotic, your words carry chaos. But when your state is grounded, even hard truth can land with precision and dignity. You don't need a different personality. You need a different baseline. Train your body to return to safety faster, and your mind will stop treating every moment like a war. And maybe that is the real turning point. Not becoming colder, but becoming steadier when heat rises. 3. Fast reactions feel powerful, but they usually expose your weakest point. There's a seductive illusion in reacting quickly. It feels like strength. It feels like dominance. It feels like you took control of the room. You fired back. You defended yourself. You made your point. You didn't let it slide. In the moment, your ego calls that victory. But if we slow down and look honestly, most fast reactions are not power. They are leakage. They show exactly where you can be manipulated. The person who can be provoked on command is not free. They are predictable. This is why emotional mastery is not about becoming passive. It's about becoming less predictable to people who feed on your predictability. Anyone can press your buttons if your buttons are on the outside. And for most people, they are. A certain tone triggers defensiveness. A certain type of criticism triggers over-explaining. A certain kind of silence triggers panic. A certain social post triggers comparison. The pattern repeats so often, it starts feeling like identity. That's just how I am. No, that's how you've been conditioned. Power begins the moment you separate identity from habit. Think of high-level operators in any field, great negotiators, elite athletes under pressure, experienced leaders in crisis. They do not confuse speed with strength. They value timing over impulse. They know that the first emotional urge is often informational, not instructional. It tells you what you feel, not what you should do. That distinction alone can save careers, relationships, reputations, and years of internal regret. Seneca warned that anger is temporary madness. Whether or not you use that exact language, the insight is brutally practical. Intense emotion narrows intelligence. You don't become more honest in that state. You become more extreme. You don't become more courageous. You become more compulsive. You don't become more effective. You become more costly. So what does real strength look like in a provocative moment? It looks quieter than people expect. It looks like a pause instead of a performance. It looks like asking one clarifying question instead of launching a speech. It looks like saying, I want to respond well, so I'm going to take a minute. It looks like choosing the right channel, not just the fastest one. Not every conflict deserves a public reply. Not every misunderstanding deserves a paragraph. Not every insult deserves your energy. Here's a useful reframe. When you react instantly, you are fighting for emotional relief. When you respond intentionally, you are fighting for strategic outcome. Relief is short-term. Outcome is life-shaping. If then for today, if you feel the urge to prove yourself immediately, then delay your response by 10 minutes and write your first reaction privately, not publicly. Then reread it and ask, does this create the future I want, or just release the tension I feel right now? You'll be shocked how often the second draft sounds like a different human being. This is not about suppressing your fire. Fire is useful. Fire cooks food, forges steel, drives engines. Uncontained fire burns your own house first. Your intensity is not the problem. Lack of direction is the problem. Keep the fire. Build the furnace. And yes, people may misread your restraint at first. Some will call it weakness because they only understand noise. Let them. Time reveals structure. Calm consistency eventually speaks louder than dramatic reactions ever could. The people who matter will notice that your words carry weight now because they're no longer thrown around to discharge emotion. Ask yourself a hard question. How many times have you called something speaking my truth when it was really just unprocessed pain with perfect timing? No shame in the answer, just data, because data can be trained. By the end of this point, hold this principle tightly. The goal is not to win moments. The goal is to stop losing yourself in moments. Real power is when your nervous system, your values, and your words move in the same direction. No split, no noise, no emotional debt later. And maybe that's the quiet upgrade most people never make, shifting from I had to react to I chose my move. 4. The 2-second gap is where your freedom lives. Most life-changing decisions are not made in dramatic turning points. They're made in tiny, almost invisible moments that feel too small to matter. A look, a tone, a sentence you almost send, a comeback sitting on your tongue. In those moments, 2 seconds can feel like nothing. But those 2 seconds are often the border between self-respect and self-sabotage. If point 1 showed you the trap, point 2 showed you the body, and point 3 exposed the illusion of speed, this point is the practical pivot. Create a deliberate gap before action. Not 10 minutes, not a retreat to a mountain, just 2 seconds of conscious interruption. That gap is short enough to use in real life and powerful enough to change your trajectory. Here's why it works. Automatic reaction collapses 3 layers into one: event, meaning, response. Something happens, your brain assigns a story instantly, and behavior fires. The gap separates these layers again. Event first, meaning second, response last. Once they're separated, you're no longer trapped inside the first interpretation your nervous system threw at you. Imagine someone cuts you off in conversation. Instant story. They don't respect me. Instant impulse. interrupt harder, get louder, punish. But in a 2-second gap, you can test alternatives. Maybe they're anxious. Maybe they're rushed. Maybe they're unaware. Maybe they are disrespectful. Still, your best move may be calm precision, not emotional escalation. The gap doesn't make you naive. It makes you accurate. Viktor Frankl's famous line about the space between stimulus and response is quoted everywhere, but this is where most people stop at inspiration and never move to implementation. So let's implement it. Use this micro-sequence in real time. Pause, breathe, name, choose. Pause, stop movement for 1 beat. Breathe, 1 slow inhale, longer exhale. Name, I feel disrespected or I feel threatened. Choose, what response serves my values and the outcome. That's it. 4 steps. Less than 10 seconds, repeatable in a meeting, a text thread, an argument, a family conversation, a comment section, a traffic jam, anywhere. And here's something subtle but crucial. The point of the gap is not to become nice. The point is to become intentional. Sometimes the right response is firm. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's direct confrontation. The gap doesn't force one personality style. It restores authorship, so your response is chosen, not spilled. If then for today, if you notice heat rising in your chest or urgency in your voice, then take a 2-second pause before your next sentence. Not after the paragraph, before the next sentence. This is where mastery is built. Mid-conversation, under pressure, while the old pattern is calling your name. You'll probably fail at this sometimes. Good. Failure here is feedback, not identity. The first win is not perfect control. The first win is catching yourself 1 second earlier than before, then 2 seconds earlier, then before the words leave your mouth. That's how rewiring happens, through recovery speed and repetition, not grand declarations. There's also a dignity layer here people overlook. When you insert the gap, you stop outsourcing your behavior to other people's moods. Their chaos stops dictating your character. Their disrespect stops deciding your tone. Their unpredictability no longer owns your day. You don't become detached from life. You become less capturable by noise. Ask yourself in real time, what would the future version of me do in this exact moment? Not later, now. That question pulls identity into action. It turns philosophy from idea into muscle. By the end of this point, remember this line: emotional freedom is rarely won in big speeches. It is won in tiny pauses no one sees. And maybe your next level is not louder confidence, sharper arguments, or better comebacks. Maybe it's those 2 quiet seconds where you return to yourself and choose. 5. Regulate the body first, or the mind will keep lying to you. When people say, "I know better, but I still reacted," they're describing a state problem, not an intelligence problem. You can read every philosophy book, memorize every quote, and still lose yourself in a single heated moment if your nervous system is overloaded. In pressure, your body sets the rules first. Your mind then writes a story that justifies whatever state you're in. That's why self-control starts below the neck. If your breath is shallow, your jaw is tight, your shoulders are high, and your voice is sharp, your brain interprets the moment as danger. Once that happens, perception narrows, nuance disappears. You stop listening and start defending. You stop understanding and start preparing to strike or retreat. Then later, when the body settles, you look back and wonder why you were so certain about something that now seems exaggerated. You weren't crazy, you were dysregulated. This is one of the most practical truths in the whole journey. Calm is not a personality trait. It's a physiological skill. It can be trained on purpose, and when you train it, your choices improve immediately. Not because life becomes easier, but because your signal-to-noise ratio gets cleaner under pressure. Try this in any tense moment. Lengthen the exhale, not dramatically, quietly. Inhale through the nose, then exhale a little longer than the inhale, twice in a row. That single shift tells your system, we are not in immediate physical danger. And when your body believes that, your thinking becomes less catastrophic and more accurate. Then do one more thing that sounds tiny but works. Unclench one muscle group on purpose. Jaw, hands, forehead, shoulders. Pick one and release it. Tension is often the body's way of saying, I'm bracing for impact. Releasing one point of tension interrupts the bracing loop. It creates a crack in the armor, and through that crack, awareness comes back online. Now let's make it concrete. Picture a conversation where someone uses a condescending tone. Old pattern. Your chest tightens, your pace speeds up, and you answer with edge. New pattern. You slow your breathing by 10%, soften your shoulders, and lower your speaking speed by 1 notch. Same content, different state. Different state, different outcome. You didn't become weak. You became harder to destabilize. This is why high-level performers in every field train their state before they train execution. Pilots, surgeons, elite athletes, negotiators, they don't wait for panic and then hope for clarity. They have a reset protocol. You need one too, especially if you want your values to survive real-life friction. Here's a simple protocol you can memorize. Lower the breath, relax the face, drop the shoulders, slow the voice, shorten the sentence. That last one matters. In activation, long explanations usually leak emotion. Short, clear sentences protect precision. I hear you. I need a minute. Let's continue when we're both calm. I'm not available for this tone. Calm words, firm boundary. If then for today, if your body gives you 2 stress signals at once, like tight chest plus fast speech, then pause the conversation for 60 seconds and run your reset before you continue, not to avoid truth. To deliver truth without collateral damage. And ask yourself this question in the middle of heat. What state am I in right now? And what story is this state trying to sell me? That question alone can save you from false conclusions, because a threatened state sells certainty. A regulated state allows curiosity. Over time, this becomes identity-level change. You stop being the person who overreacts when provoked and become the person who stabilizes first, then speaks. People feel that shift around you. Your presence gets heavier in the best way. Less noise, more gravity. You don't need to dominate the room. You influence it by refusing to infect it with your panic. And maybe that's the real edge most people miss. Intelligence without regulation is fragile, but regulation turns intelligence into power you can trust when it matters most. 6. Don't believe every thought that arrives wearing urgency. One of the most expensive mistakes we make is treating thoughts like facts just because they feel intense. A thought appears, they're disrespecting me. I'm being replaced. This is going to end badly. I have to respond now. And because it lands with emotional force, we assume it must be true. But intensity is not evidence. Urgency is not accuracy. And in emotional moments, the mind is not a neutral observer. It is a storyteller under pressure. This is where reactivity gets fuel. When your nervous system is activated, your brain starts pattern matching fast, not thinking deeply. It reaches for old templates: rejection, humiliation, loss of control, abandonment, failure. Then it projects those templates onto the present moment as if they are objective reality. You're no longer seeing what is happening, you're seeing what your fear predicts. And once you confuse prediction with reality, reaction feels justified. The Stoics were relentlessly practical about this. They taught that the first impression is automatic, but assent is optional. In modern language, the first thought may pop up uninvited, but your agreement with that thought is a choice. You don't control the knock at the door, you control who gets a seat at your table. Think of a common scene. Someone you care about replies with one dry sentence. Your mind instantly says, "Something is wrong." 10 minutes later, they're upset. 20 minutes later, "I messed this up." Then behavior follows. Over-texting, over-explaining, emotional bargaining, or silent resentment. All from one unverified thought chain. The event was small. The interpretation was huge. The cost was real. So the skill here is not stop thinking. It's evaluate thinking. Use this filter in real time. What are the facts? What is the story? What else could be true? Facts. The message was short. Story. They're pulling away. Alternative. They're busy, tired, distracted, overwhelmed, or simply brief by style. That third line, what else could be true, creates cognitive oxygen. Without it, you suffocate inside one narrative and call it certainty. Here's another move that works fast. Shift from "this is true" to "I'm having the thought that this is true." That tiny language change creates distance between you and the thought. It turns identity into observation. Observation is where choice returns. You stop being carried by the thought and start examining it. If, then, for today, if a thought pushes you to act immediately, then write it down in one sentence and wait 10 minutes before taking action. After 10 minutes, challenge it with 2 alternative explanations. If it still holds, respond calmly. If it weakens, you just prevented unnecessary damage. This isn't denial, it's discipline. And discipline here protects relationships as much as it protects your peace. Many conflicts are not caused by what happened. They're caused by the meaning we assigned too quickly. We react to our interpretation, then force others to defend against a crime they never committed. Slower interpretation leads to cleaner communication. Cleaner communication leads to fewer emotional messes to clean up later. Ask yourself in heated moments, am I responding to reality or to a story that feels real? That question can interrupt years of repeated suffering. Over time, this changes your entire emotional economy. Fewer false alarms, fewer impulsive texts, fewer internal spirals, more signal, less noise. You begin to trust yourself more, not because you feel less, but because you verify before you amplify. And maybe that is real mental strength. Not having only positive thoughts, not forcing perfect calm, but refusing to worship every urgent thought that passes through your mind. 7. Reframe the provocation and you reclaim the wheel. Most provocations don't control you by force. They control you by meaning. The event happens once, but the interpretation can hit you 100 times. A dismissive tone, a rude comment, a public slight. These are sparks. What turns sparks into fire is the frame you place around them. If your frame is, "This proves I'm small," you burn. If your frame is, "This reveals their state, not my worth," you stay clear. Reframing is not pretending bad behavior is good. It's refusing to hand your identity to someone else's moment. When you don't reframe, you personalize everything. Their bad day becomes your failure. Their insecurity becomes your emergency. Their impulsiveness becomes your emotional assignment. Then you live in constant reaction, always managing damage you didn't create. Reframing breaks that contract. It says, I can acknowledge what happened without absorbing it as self-definition. A practical way to do this is to separate message from delivery. Sometimes the content has value, but the tone is poor. Sometimes both are poor. Either way, you can decide what to keep and what to discard. Keep useful data. Discard emotional poison. That one skill makes you difficult to manipulate because manipulators rely on you swallowing the whole package. Imagine someone says, "You always overcomplicate everything." Old frame, attack, humiliation, must defend now. New frame, possible data hidden in rough delivery. Ask, is there 5% truth I can use? If yes, extract it and improve. If no, let it pass without carrying it into your nervous system all day. Either way, you win. You either get better or stay undisturbed. This is where Stoic clarity becomes practical power. Your peace should not depend on perfect people. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself about meeting difficult people as a daily expectation, not a shocking exception. That mindset matters. If you expect friction sometimes, you prepare for it. If you expect ideal behavior from everyone, you keep getting emotionally ambushed by reality. Reframing is preloaded realism. People will be impatient, insecure, distracted, unfair, reactive. Your task is not to fix all of them. Your task is to choose your stance. Use this in real time. This is not an identity verdict, it's a moment. This is information, not instruction. Their behavior is data about them. My response is data about me. These lines are not motivational quotes. They are cognitive anchors. In stress, anchors stop drift. If then for today, if someone's tone triggers you, then silently reframe before replying, "This is a test of my stability, not my worth." Then respond to the core issue in one calm sentence, not to the emotional bait. And notice the hidden freedom here. Reframing gives you options. You can disengage. You can set a boundary. You can correct with firmness. You can ask a clarifying question. You can postpone the conversation. Without reframing, there is only one option: reaction. With reframing, there is strategy. Ask yourself this in any tense exchange. What frame would make me stronger, wiser, and calmer right now? Not more impressive, not more dominant. Stronger, wiser, calmer. Over time, people will feel this shift around you. They'll notice you don't get dragged easily. You don't bite every hook. You don't turn every spark into a fire. That doesn't mean you became cold. It means you became sovereign. Your center is no longer rented out to the loudest voice in the room. And maybe that's the deeper lesson. The world can throw you moments, but it cannot force your meaning. Meaning is where power lives. Choose it carefully, and your life starts to feel lighter without becoming smaller. 8. Deal with difficult people without handing them your nervous system. At some point, philosophy becomes practical, or it becomes decoration. And nothing tests practicality like difficult people. The interrupter, the passive-aggressive critic, the chronic victim, the subtle manipulator, the person who acts calm but keeps poking your dignity to get a reaction. You can read about peace all day, but if one personality can still hijack your state, then your peace is rented, not owned. Here's the hard truth. You don't need everyone to be mature for you to be stable. You need a protocol. Most people enter these interactions with hope instead of strategy. They hope this time the person will be fair, clear, respectful, accountable. Sometimes that happens, often it doesn't. So they keep getting surprised by patterns that were obvious from the beginning. Stability grows when you stop being surprised by repeated behavior and start responding to patterns, not promises. First principle, classify the behavior before you answer it. Is this confusion, disrespect, manipulation, or simple mismatch? Each requires a different response. If you treat manipulation like confusion, you over-explain. If you treat confusion like disrespect, you escalate unnecessarily. Clarity about pattern prevents emotional waste. Second principle, never match chaotic energy to prove strength. Matching chaos feels powerful for 5 minutes and expensive for 5 days. Your goal is not to mirror their state, it's to preserve yours. Speak slower than the room. Use fewer words than your impulse wants. Ask cleaner questions than the moment deserves. Precision is power when emotions are loud. Third principle, make boundaries behavioral, not emotional. Instead of, I feel like you never respect me, use, if we keep interrupting each other, I'm ending this conversation and we can continue later. One is an emotional debate with no finish line. The other is a clear condition with a clear consequence. Difficult people argue feelings forever. They respect structure eventually. Let's make this concrete. If someone interrupts repeatedly, don't race them. Say, I'll finish my sentence, then I'll listen. Calm tone, steady eye contact, no sarcasm. Repeat once if needed. If it continues, pause the interaction. You just taught them the cost of ignoring your boundary. If someone uses guilt to control you, don't defend your character for 10 minutes. Say, I hear you're upset. My decision stays the same. This protects compassion without surrendering agency. If someone provokes publicly, don't perform publicly. Say, less there, address directly later, or not at all if it's noise. Public reactions are often ego traps disguised as justice. If, then for today, if a person repeatedly pulls you into emotional loops, then shift from explaining to structuring. One boundary sentence, one consequence, one follow-through. No extra speeches. Now the deeper layer. Difficult people often trigger old roles in us. The peacemaker who over-accommodates, the fighter who over-dominates, the rescuer who over-functions, the pleaser who abandons self-respect to keep harmony. When you feel overactivated, ask, what old role am I about to play? Awareness of role breaks repetition of role. This doesn't mean hardening your heart. It means relocating your compassion. Give compassion to the person without giving away your center. You can be kind and firm, warm and clear, patient and unavailable for disrespect. These are not contradictions. They are maturity. Over time, a strange thing happens. Some difficult people adapt around your consistency. Others drift away because your boundaries remove their payoff. Both outcomes are wins. Your job was never to control their personality. Your job was to stop financing it with your energy. And remember this line when the pressure rises. I can respect your humanity without participating in your dysfunction. That is emotional adulthood in one sentence. Because in the end, mastery is not avoiding difficult people forever. Mastery is meeting them without becoming them. 9. Set quiet boundaries that don't need drama to be real. A lot of people confuse boundaries with confrontation. They think if they're not loud, they're not strong. If they're not forceful, they're not clear. But real boundaries are not performances. They are decisions. Calm, specific, repeatable decisions about what you will and won't participate in. When boundaries are missing, reactivity fills the space. You tolerate too much, stay silent too long, then explode. After the explosion, you feel guilty, overcorrect, and the cycle starts again. That pattern doesn't mean you're unstable. It usually means you tried to buy peace with self-abandonment, and the bill came due. A quiet boundary ends that cycle before it reaches emotional debt. The key is this: boundaries work best when they are behavioral, not emotional. Not, you never respect me, but if this turns into insults, I'm ending this call. Not, I need you to understand how I feel first, but I'm available to talk when we can both speak respectfully. Not, please don't do this to me, but I won't continue this in this format. Short, clear, enforceable. And that last word matters most. Enforceable. A boundary without follow-through is a suggestion. People learn your standards less from your words and more from what happens after your words. If you keep explaining the same limit without acting on it, you teach others to wait out your discomfort. Here's where many good people struggle. They worry boundaries are unkind. They fear being seen as cold, selfish, difficult. But no boundary is often what creates resentment, passive aggression, and emotional distance. Clear boundaries protect connection by removing ambiguity. They let people know where the bridge is and where the cliff is. Think about your energy like a budget. Every unnecessary argument, every repeated explanation, every tolerated disrespect is spending from an account you can't refill instantly. Boundaries are financial discipline for your nervous system. They decide where your emotional money goes. Practical sequence for today. State the limit once. State the consequence once. Execute calmly. No speeches after execution. Example. If we keep raising our voices, I'm stepping away and we can continue later. If it escalates, step away. No debate, no courtroom, no emotional essay. The action is the message. If then, for today, if someone crosses the same line twice, then reduce words by 50% and increase consequences by 100%. Less explaining, more alignment. Now the inner boundary, equally important. External boundaries fail when internal boundaries are weak. Internal boundary means you stop over-negotiating with your own clarity. You stop saying yes when your body says no. You stop replying instantly to avoid discomfort. You stop treating your peace as less important than being liked. Ask this in real time. What am I permitting right now that I will resent later? That question will save you months of emotional cleanup. And yes, some people will resist your new boundaries. Not because you're wrong, but because the old version of you was convenient. Let them adjust or let them leave. Either way, your life gets cleaner. Quiet boundaries don't need anger to be valid. They don't need long explanations to be fair. They don't need everyone's approval to be right. They only need your consistency. Because at the deepest level, boundaries are not walls against people. They are doors with hinges. They let respect in and keep chaos out. And maybe that's the real upgrade here. You stop asking for permission to protect your peace and start treating your peace like something sacred enough to guard without noise. 10. Stop over-explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Over-explaining feels noble in the moment. You tell yourself you're being fair, transparent, mature. You add context, then more context, then one more paragraph so they can really get it. But many times, over-explaining is not clarity, it's anxiety in a polished outfit. It's the fear of being judged, rejected, or seen as wrong, so you keep talking long after your point was already clear. And the hidden cost is massive. The more you over-explain, the less weight your words carry. The more you justify, the more your boundary sounds negotiable. The more you chase understanding, the more you abandon your center. There's a difference between communicating and convincing. Communicating is offering truth clearly. Convincing is trying to control how others feel about your truth. The first is healthy. The second is endless. If someone is genuinely open, one clear sentence can be enough. If someone is committed to misreading you, 100 sentences won't be enough. So why do smart people keep over-explaining? Because uncertainty hurts. Silence after you speak can feel like danger. Disapproval can feel like loss. Misunderstanding can feel like identity collapse. And in that discomfort, the mind whispers, "Say more, fix it, make them agree." But agreement is not the same as respect, and it is definitely not the same as peace. This is where emotional adulthood gets real. Your job is to be clear, not to be universally approved. Try this shift immediately. Before replying, ask, am I adding clarity or am I seeking relief? If it's relief, pause. Relief-driven words usually create long-term friction. Clarity-driven words create structure, a practical framework. Say your point once, simply. If needed, restate once, briefly. If it keeps looping, stop feeding the loop. Example: I understand your view. my decision is final. If pressed again, I've explained my position. I'm not debating it further. Then disengage. No hostility, no sarcasm, no emotional essay, just clean closure. If, then for today, if you catch yourself writing a third long paragraph to defend a clear decision, then delete it and replace it with one sentence that states your boundary and ends the exchange. Now the deeper truth, over-explaining, often comes from an old survival strategy. If I can make everyone understand me, I'll be safe. Maybe that helped you once. Maybe in childhood, school, or old relationships, you learned to earn emotional safety through perfect explanations. But now that strategy is expensive. It keeps your nervous system in performance mode. You're always presenting a case instead of living your life. You don't need to be careless with people's feelings. You can be warm, respectful, and concise at the same time. In fact, concise communication is often kinder. It reduces confusion. It reduces false hope. It reduces emotional manipulation disguised as just one more question. Ask yourself this when tension rises. What would clear and self-respecting sound like in one sentence? That question retrains your voice, and expect withdrawal symptoms. At first, saying less may feel rude. Holding your line may feel selfish. Let that discomfort pass. It's not a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you're no longer negotiating your dignity for temporary harmony. Over time, people will start to feel a different energy from you. Less defensiveness, less pleading, more steadiness. Your words become fewer but stronger because they come from alignment, not panic. Remember this: explanation is a tool, not a lifestyle. Use it to clarify, not to chase permission. And maybe this is the quiet freedom you've been needing, speaking your truth once with respect and walking forward without dragging your soul through endless courtroom arguments. 11. Release the addiction to being right and you'll finally get your life back. There's a kind of exhaustion nobody talks about enough. The exhaustion of needing to win every exchange. Not every fight, just every subtle moment where your ego feels challenged. A correction in tone, a disagreement in public, a comment that sounds dismissive. Suddenly your whole system says, prove it, defend it, win this. And even when you win, you walk away drained, tense, and strangely empty. Because being right is not the same as being free. Most people don't realize how much energy they lose to micro battles that change nothing. They spend hours building perfect rebuttals in their head, replaying conversations, editing imaginary speeches, waiting for the next chance to land the final blow. But the real loss is not time, it's attention. And attention is your life force. Where attention goes, identity grows. If your attention is always trapped in proving, your identity becomes defensive by default. This is where non-reaction becomes deeply strategic. You stop asking, how do I win this exchange? And start asking, what outcome actually matters here? Peace, progress, boundaries, long-term trust, clean separation. The moment you shift to outcome, half your arguments disappear on their own. The Stoics were clear on this in spirit. Protect your character more than your image. Your image wants applause. Your character wants alignment. Image says, don't let that slide. Character asks, does this deserve my life energy? That question is a filter for everything. Texts, comments, meetings, family tension, social noise. Try a practical distinction. Some conversations are truth-seeking, some are power-seeking. If the other person is truth-seeking, engage calmly. If they're power-seeking, reduce fuel. Power-seeking conversations are traps. Their goal isn't clarity, it's dominance, emotional control, or public positioning. In those moments, extra logic won't save you. Precision and boundaries will. Sometimes the strongest move is one clean sentence and exit. Not because you lost, because you refused to play a game designed to waste you. Here's a strong replacement pattern. From "I need to correct every detail" to "I'll correct what matters, then move on." From "They must admit I'm right" to "I'll act on my values whether or not they agree." From "I can't let this go" to "I can let this go and keep my power." If then, for today, if you feel the urge to keep arguing after your point is already clear, then ask one question. Am I still seeking truth, or am I seeking victory? If it's victory, end the exchange with dignity. Now, this doesn't mean becoming vague or spineless. You can still be direct. You can still challenge bad ideas. You can still protect standards. The change is internal. You no longer need emotional conquest to feel solid. You're not trying to crush people. You're trying to stay coherent. Ask yourself this in real time. What would a strong, self-respecting person do if they didn't need to be seen as right? That question opens a surprising answer more often than you think. They'd say less, listen better, choose battles carefully, and keep moving. Over time, something beautiful happens. You become harder to bait. Your mood stops depending on agreement. Your relationships become cleaner because you're no longer turning every difference into a referendum on your worth. And your work improves because reclaimed attention returns to creation instead of combat. Remember this line: every unnecessary argument is a tax on your future. And maybe that's the quiet turning point, when you realize peace is not what happens after you prove yourself. Peace is what happens when you stop treating every disagreement as a threat to who you are. 12. Close the loop after the moment ends, or your mind will keep reopening the wound. A lot of people think reactivity only happens during conflict, but for many of us, the real damage comes later. When the conversation is over, the room is quiet, and the mind keeps replaying everything like a broken film reel. I should have said this. Why did they say that? What if this means something bigger? The body is still carrying the event, and the mind keeps feeding it, long after action is no longer possible. That is emotional looping. And looping is delayed reactivity. You're no longer reacting to the person, you're reacting to memory, imagination, and unfinished meaning. One moment becomes 10, then 50. By nighttime, you're exhausted not from life itself, but from mentally reliving a scene that already ended. This is how one difficult interaction steals an entire day or week. If you want real self-mastery, you need a closing ritual, because your nervous system does not always understand that it's over just because the clock moved forward. You have to signal closure intentionally, not suppression, not denial. Closure. A deliberate shift from processing to completion. Start with this simple 3-step reset at the end of any emotionally charged moment. Name what happened. Name what you felt. Name what you choose next. For example, what happened? I felt dismissed in that meeting. What I felt? Anger and embarrassment. What I choose next? One clear follow-up message tomorrow. Then I move on. That third line is the key. Without choice, your mind stays in open tabs. With choice, it gets a direction. Now add a physical completion cue. Stand up, take a short walk, wash your face, change rooms, stretch your chest and shoulders. These actions sound basic, but they matter because memory is state-dependent. If you stay in the same posture, same place, same breathing pattern, the brain keeps re-entering the same emotional track. A small body shift helps the mind accept a new chapter. Another powerful practice: write a 2-column debrief. Column 1, facts. Column 2, story. Facts: they interrupted me twice. Story: they think I'm incompetent. Then ask, what evidence supports the story and what evidence does not? This interrupts catastrophizing and restores proportion. If then, for today, if you catch yourself replaying the same scene more than 3 times, then do a 5-minute closure drill. Write the facts, extract one lesson, choose one next action, and deliberately end the analysis. One lesson, one action, then release. This is important. Closure does not mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means refusing to bleed twice for the same cut. Feel it once, learn once, act once, then stop paying interest on a finished moment. And yes, sometimes a moment truly requires deeper repair. In that case, schedule it. I will think about this tomorrow at 10 o'clock for 15 minutes. Scheduled reflection prevents all-day rumination. Your mind relaxes when it knows the issue has a container. Ask yourself tonight, am I seeking resolution or am I rehearsing pain? Resolution leads to action. Rehearsal leads to fatigue. Over time, this practice changes your baseline. You stop carrying emotional residue from one conversation into the next. You show up cleaner to your work, your family, your goals, your sleep. You become someone who processes deeply but does not drown in processing. Remember this line: reflection builds wisdom, rumination drains life. And maybe that is the quiet liberation here. Not never getting hurt, but no longer letting one moment keep renting space in your mind after the contract has expired. 13. Strategic silence is not withdrawal. It's precision under pressure. Silence gets misunderstood all the time. Some people think silence means weakness, fear, avoidance, or lack of clarity. But there is a kind of silence that is none of those things. It's deliberate. It's composed. It's the silence of someone who refuses to waste truth in a moment that cannot receive it. Not every situation deserves your words immediately. Not every person deserves your full explanation. Not every accusation deserves your defense. Strategic silence is what protects your power when the room is emotional, impulsive, or committed to noise. It keeps you from donating your energy to arguments that only get stronger when you feed them. It lets time do some of the work your ego wants to do instantly. Here's the key distinction. Silence can be fear-based, or silence can be value-based. Fear-based silence says, I'm scared to speak. Value-based silence says, I choose the right timing, tone, and context. That difference changes everything. Think of a moment where someone pushes you publicly, maybe a sarcastic comment, a challenge framed to embarrass you, or a message designed to provoke quick reaction. Old pattern: defend fast, explain everything, escalate regret later. New pattern: pause, say less, hold center. Respond when it serves outcome, not impulse. Sometimes the strongest sentence is, I hear you. Sometimes it's, noted. Sometimes it's, I'm open to discussing this privately. Sometimes it's no sentence at all. Silence becomes strategic when it does one of 3 things: protects clarity, protects dignity, or protects timing. Protect clarity. When emotion is high and comprehension is low, words get distorted. Protect dignity. When the exchange is bait, your reaction becomes their reward. Protect timing. When the channel is wrong, public, rushed, performative, even true words land badly. The Stoic spirit here is simple. Do not let external chaos set your internal tempo. If others are rushing, you slow. If others are loud, you lower tone. If others are theatrical, you become precise. You don't disappear. You become harder to manipulate. Now, an important warning. Strategic silence is not passive aggression. It is not punishing people with cold distance. It is not emotional stonewalling to gain control. Real strategic silence is clean. It has intention. It leads to better action, not endless avoidance. That means when silence is used, follow it with one clear move when the moment is right. A calm boundary, a concise clarification, a direct decision. Silence is the pause before precision, not the replacement for responsibility. Try this protocol. Pause the immediate reaction. Assess the context. Useful or performative? Choose one of three responses: brief reply, delayed reply, no reply. If needed, return later with one clear sentence and one clear boundary. If, then for today, if you feel pressured to respond instantly in a heated moment, then use a delay line. I want to respond thoughtfully, so I'll get back to you. And return only when your state is steady. Ask yourself in real time, will speaking now increase understanding or only increase noise? If it increases noise, silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Over time, strategic silence upgrades your presence. People feel that you're not easily baited. Your words start carrying more weight because you don't throw them around. You stop arguing to release pressure and start speaking to create direction. That shift alone can transform your relationships, leadership, and self-respect. And maybe this is the deeper gift of silence. It teaches you that your value is not measured by how fast you answer, how loudly you defend, or how often you explain. Sometimes your highest form of strength is the moment you stay grounded. Say less and let your next move, not your next emotion, do the talking. 14. Build an emergency protocol for anger before you need it. Most people wait until they're already flooded to figure out what to do. That's like learning to swim while drowning. In calm moments, everyone sounds wise. In triggered moments, training is all that remains. So, if you want to stop reacting in ways you regret, you need a preloaded protocol, simple enough to remember when your mind is hot, strong enough to protect your future when your impulse is loud. Anger itself is not the enemy. Anger is information. It often points to a value, a boundary, a hurt, or an injustice. The danger begins when information becomes command. When anger says, "Move now," and you obey without inspection, you trade dignity for discharge. You feel relief for 10 seconds and consequence for 10 days. A protocol interrupts that trade. Use this 5-step sequence in any high-heat moment. Stop, breathe, name, delay, choose. Stop means freeze the behavior, not the feeling. Don't send, don't post, don't call. Don't continue the sentence you're about to weaponize. Breathe means regulate your physiology fast. 1 deep inhale through the nose, slow, long exhale through the mouth. Repeat 3 times. The goal is not to become peaceful. The goal is to become reachable by your higher mind. Name means label the state with precision. I feel disrespected. I feel cornered. I feel dismissed. Naming reduces emotional fog and prevents random collateral damage. Delay means create time between feeling and action. 10 minutes minimum for texts, 1 night for major decisions if possible. Time is not avoidance here, it is quality control. Choose means decide based on values and outcome, not emotional urgency. Ask, what response protects my dignity and moves this situation forward? Let's make this real. You receive a message that feels insulting. Old pattern, instant reply with edge, then escalation, then mental chaos. Protocol pattern, you stop typing, breathe 3 cycles, label anger plus hurt. Delay reply, then send 1 clear line later. I'm open to discussing this respectfully. I won't continue in this tone. Same event, different identity. Notice what just happened. You didn't suppress anger, you converted it. This is a key maturity move. Transmute heat into direction. Anger can become a boundary, a hard conversation, a policy change, a clear decision, an exit from a harmful dynamic. But first, it must pass through structure. Raw anger burns. Structured anger builds. If, then for today. If anger rises above a 7 out of 10, then activate full protocol immediately. No decisions, no declarations, no digital responses until your breath and voice return to baseline. and build environmental friction in advance. Remove one-click reactions where possible. Turn off message previews. Move social apps off your home screen. Save a draft folder called Not Sent. Tell one trusted person, if I'm heated, I'll message you before I reply. Friction is not weakness. Friction is design for your better self. Ask this in the heat. Will this action make tomorrow's version of me proud or busy with damage control? That question is a compass. Over time, the protocol becomes automatic, not because life gets easier, but because you become prepared. You stop improvising your character in emergencies. You execute a standard, and standards are what make you dependable to yourself. Remember this line: the moment of anger is not the moment of truth. It is the moment of test. And maybe this is where your transformation becomes undeniable. When the old trigger appears, the old impulse arrives, but the old behavior never comes back. 15. Become the person who is hard to provoke, easy to respect, and impossible to control. At the end of all this, the real goal is not perfect calm. It's a new identity. Not, I'm trying not to react, but I'm someone who chooses. That shift sounds subtle, but it changes everything. When identity changes, effort drops. You stop fighting yourself every day and start moving from a center that feels natural, stable, and clean. Most people spend years trying to control outcomes while ignoring the one force that shapes every outcome: who they are under pressure. The moment gets loud and their identity disappears. Old patterns take over. But the person you're building now is different. You don't collapse into every trigger. You don't confuse urgency with importance. You don't donate your nervous system to anyone with a sharp tone and bad timing. You carry your own weather. This point is where all previous work becomes one integrated practice. You notice the trigger. You regulate the body. You question the thought. You reframe the meaning. You choose the response. You close the loop. Not as separate techniques anymore, but as one way of being. Think about what this means in daily life. In relationships, you stop escalating and start clarifying. At work, you stop reacting to politics and start playing long-term strategy. With family, you stop repeating old roles and start setting clean boundaries. Online, you stop feeding noise and start protecting focus. In private, you stop replaying pain and start building direction. Same world, new operator. And yes, this identity will challenge people around you. Some benefited from your old reactivity. Some were comfortable when your mood was easy to influence. Some liked the version of you that over-explained, over-gave, and over-tolerated. Your calm consistency may feel unfamiliar to them. Let it. Growth always disrupts old contracts. There's a line from James Clear that fits here. Every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. In that sense, every non-reaction is a vote. Every grounded pause is a vote. Every clean boundary is a vote. Every time you choose dignity over discharge, you're casting another vote for a self you can trust. If, then for this week, if you are provoked, then your first commitment is not to win the moment. It is to protect your standard. Standard first, strategy second, emotion third. Now ask yourself one final question that can guide the next chapter of your life. What kind of person do I become when pressure rises? Not when things are easy, not when people are kind, when pressure rises. Because pressure doesn't create character, it reveals training. And your training now is clear. You are building a nervous system that returns to center faster. A mind that verifies before it amplifies, a voice that says less and means more, boundaries that don't need noise, silence that carries precision, decisions that reduce future regret. That is real power. Quiet, but unmistakable. So here's the resonance I want you to carry after this episode. Your peace is no longer a reward for perfect circumstances. It is a discipline you practice in imperfect ones. And once that discipline becomes identity, You don't just feel better, you become unhookable, hard to provoke, easy to respect, impossible to